Do you compare yourself to others? Maybe at work, you see your colleagues and you think, oh, they look so confident, they're so articulate, they're always on top of everything. Or you're looking at Instagram, you see people and they have these beautiful bodies, they have great relationships, fantastic lives. Well, if you do that and you don't feel great about it, this is for you. Today, I'm going to share with you why it's normal to compare ourselves to others, even though it may not seem so helpful. Also, 2 stories of women who suffered from comparisonitis that you might be able to relate with, and 3 steps to turn that unhelpful comparison to your advantage. O genki desu ka? If you don't know me, I'm Helen Iwata. I'm originally from the UK and I've lived and worked in Japan for 30 years. I support women to excel in their work without feeling exhausted. So let's start with that first story. In a workshop, one of the participants was really frustrated, she said, because she wasn't as good at giving English presentations as her colleague. Now, this was a Japanese lady, lovely Japanese lady. Interesting thing, her colleague was an American male. I wonder how much he's been practicing English compared to how much she has been practicing English. He was also older than her. He had more business experience than her, and yet she was comparing herself with him and frustrated that she wasn't as good as him. So why do we compare ourselves to others? Well, it's because of who we were as primitive human beings. It's because of the way that the brain is wired. As primitive human beings, we lived in groups. We had to be part of the group. We had to stay in the group to survive. If we were cast out of the group, then it might be difficult for us to find food, or we might become food for a passing beast. So being in that group, it was important for us to compare ourselves with others, to see what is normal in the group, what is acceptable in the group. And that is why we focus on it so much. Interestingly, in 1954, psychologist Leon Festinger developed what he called social comparison theory. He said that people evaluate themselves by comparing to others for 2 reasons. Number 1, to reduce uncertainty in the area that they're comparing themselves, and 2, to learn how to define themselves. Also, interestingly, and this is according to a much more recent study from 2022, women are more likely to suffer from comparisonitis than men. And comparisonitis is when you're comparing yourself in a way that makes you feel bad. So they compare themselves upwards with people who are more advanced in some way than they are, and that often leads to low self-esteem. And especially in male-dominated workplaces, they're more likely to compare themselves with men. And even though there's no difference in IQ between men and women tend to underestimate their intelligence, and men tend to overestimate it. So here's that second story for you. And this was the other day. I'd given a presentation. We had a Q&A session at the end. And one of the women in the group, she said that she felt frustrated because her friend was better at snowboarding than she was. She'd been learning, her friend had been learning, they'd both started at the same time, and she wasn't advancing at the same speed as her friend. And I was already thinking as she was saying this, interesting the comparison she's making. I wonder what this friend, is this friend very similar to her in build, physical ability, because that's all going to affect how well you can progress in snowboarding. So as the conversation unfolded, it turned out that the friend that she was comparing herself with was a male. Okay, so completely different body. So why would you compare yourself with someone who has a completely different body? Of course, it's natural that they're going to progress at a different level. And I asked her, I said, what is it that you're doing the snowboarding for? What's your goal? And she said, to have fun, to enjoy myself. And I said, how does it make you feel when you compare yourself with your friend? I said, I feel miserable. Okay, stop comparing. Interestingly, I started snowboarding when I was 47 years old. You may have heard me talk about this before. And I went snowboarding again at the beginning of this year, took a lesson for the first time in quite some time, and I have advanced from shoshinsha to shokyusha. So from absolute beginner to beginner. I'm not comparing myself with others. So my husband, my daughter, they have advanced much more quickly at snowboarding than I have. And that's fine because for me, it's all about having fun. So two things that are really important to think about when we're comparing ourselves to others. The first one is, remember that you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. You don't really know what's going on underneath. You don't know all of the background. So if, for example, let's take this simple example of somebody is better at English than you are. Well, how long has that person been studying English? What's their background? How many hours have they invested in their English studies? Or it could be if someone is doing really well in an area at work, well, what's happening in their private life? You don't know that. It's kind of like you're comparing that, you're on an online meeting and you see this beautiful virtual background and it's all like this immaculate office. And then you know that your background is actually piles of washing and there's children's toys strewn all over the floor. So you're not making a fair comparison. The second thing to remember is that the brain naturally looks for evidence to support what you already believe. So if you already have the belief that you're not good enough, you're going to be looking for comparisons, looking for more evidence to support that belief that you already have. Theodore Roosevelt called comparison the thief of joy, and he was talking about the type of comparison that makes us feel bad. But comparison can be useful if you use it as inspiration for what's possible for you. Okay, so here are 3 tips to turn unhelpful comparison to your advantage. And they all begin with R to make it easy to remember. Number 1 is recognize. First of all, recognize that it's normal to compare yourself with others. Okay, just from doing that, it will help you to feel better. Number 2 is to remember. Remember that you're not necessarily comparing everything about yourself with the other person. You're only seeing part of the story, the tip of the iceberg. You don't know how long it took the person to do the thing that they're doing. You don't know what else is going on in their life. And the second part of that is that you have a tendency, a natural tendency because of the way that your brain works, to look for evidence to support what you already believe. And number 3 is to reframe what you're thinking. So when you see someone and instead of thinking, oh, that person's speaking so confidently, I could never speak as well as her, then you can reframe, think of it in a different way so that it's more inspirational, so that, oh, she can do it. When I put in the practice, when I learn the tools, I can do that too. The only person to compare yourself with is you yesterday. This is a phrase that I've used for a long time, and I would even actually adapt that now. So the only person to compare yourself with is you yesterday. Also, if yesterday wasn't a great day for you, maybe even comparing with yesterday isn't a great idea. Be kind to yourself. Make comparisons that are supportive for you. If you've enjoyed these tips today, please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Click that little bell so that you get notifications when the next video's up. Like, share, comment, do all those things. I am here for you, and I am here to share more videos on self-care, planning, communication, and productivity so that you can enjoy less stress and more success in your work and life. All right, make it a brilliant and joyful day.